and welcome to The Natural View. I'm Maggie Jacko. I'm the content director of Whole Foods Magazine, and my co-host is Todd Polly of 24 Stories Marketing. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Maggie.
All right, well, Todd, we are continuing our special leadership series, and today we have William Rowe of Nutrasource. He's the co-founder, president, and CEO, and he's going to talk to us a bit about the company's growth, what's up for the future, and his leadership style. So welcome, Will. We're so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Maggie and Todd. Great to be here with you both on a sunny Friday afternoon.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a good way to kick off the weekend right here.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
It is. So as some of our viewers know, in July 2023, in the print and digital issues of Whole Foods Magazine, we have our leadership special, and we profile industry companies. And in there, we take a look at Nutrasource, which recently celebrated 20 years in business. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an awesome milestone. So today we just want to talk a little bit more about your leadership style, your goals, the corporate culture at Nutrasource, and just some of the behind the scenes that has driven this success. So if you could start just by telling us about your background and how you got started in the natural products industry.
For sure. So it all started about 21, 22 years ago now, when I was working in the development office at the University of Guelph. And for those who don't know, Guelph is a university town about an hour outside of Toronto, west of Toronto. It's a life sciences intensive university. It has a big vet college, a big agriculture college. So I think they're up to about 700 PhDs in the life sciences. I think that's the largest cluster in the world now. I think that's one of the claims to fame. In like 1 square kilometer, there's 700 PhD scientists in the life sciences, which is kind of cool. And with that, I was representing the science and engineering colleges here at Guelph to the marketplace, raising funds for scholarships, for labs, for new infrastructure, for teaching programs, etc. And from that, I met Dr. Bruce Holub, who was a world leading expert, still is, Professor Emeritus now, retired, but at the time, right in the sort of the height of his career on good fats and bad fats. And from there, we started talking about services and service offerings in different ways we could bring scientific acumen and credentials to the North, at that time, the Canadian and US dietary supplement, natural health product industry. There was a lot of confusion at the time. It had just come out of Déchet in 1994. Regulations or discussion of regulations were starting to form on the Canadian side of the border, and companies were looking for a lot of help in the natural health product realm. How do we showcase that we're A-level players? We're trying to do the right thing for consumers, for the marketplace. We're trying to build quality. We're trying to get stuff tested, but there's a lot of shifting goalposts and misunderstandings. So we saw that as an opportunity to launch Nutrasource as a service provider to the industry. It started with a diagnostic test. So in our original name, we had Nutrasource Diagnostics, Inc. But from day one, the whole idea was to grow a service platform, which is now morphed into a certifications business unit, a full service clinical business unit, and a full service regulatory unit. And how do we offer those services in a cohesive, integrated way and become a world leader, or attempt to become a world leader in the provision of services to the nutritional industry globally? And that's really been the vision since day one. And the journey is like a roller coaster, but you still know where you want to end up at the end of the roller coaster ride. And it's kind of full circle back to where you started. And that's what it was all about for us. And we've always really stayed true to that entrepreneurial vision of let's work towards becoming the world's leading service provider to the natural health product industry in these core areas. So we've never wavered from that. We've stayed really laser sharp focused on that. Of course, we have to be agile and flexible, as any business does, respond to market trends, pick up on market trends, provide relevant services of value to the industry, or they're not going to sign up with you ultimately. And we've really kept true to that core vision and focus and never strayed from that. So that, to me, is the biggest part of our success, and making sure our staff understood that, the marketplace understood that, our vendors understood that, and even the government programs that we work with on both sides of the border, the regulatory agencies, Health Canada and the FDA, who we work with on a daily basis, across our many projects for our clients. That all had to stay consistent and engaged, and they needed to understand that and stay aligned with us in that respect. So, and we had to adjust to that as it morphed and developed over time during that journey. And I think that's a key to us being a market leader and staying a market leader in that context.
Yeah, you know, Will, it's interesting because not many people from our industry came from academia, right? Like, you know, and then ended up running a company. So you've seen both sides of the research portion of our industry. And I'm just wondering, given that unique perspective, as you see other people come into the industry, what advice do you offer? You know, someone who might be new, someone who might be, you know, trying to forge a career or a place in the industry. What words of wisdom could you share?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I think that this industry is highly technical. In the US market, because it has some regulations around manufacturing for dietary supplements, but not pre-approval. The barriers to entry for the US dietary supplement market, although they've increased, are still a lot lower than other jurisdictions in the world for natural health products. In Europe, they're called food supplements, of course, but it's really the same category. So what I found is that the US market is obviously still the key market for all of our clients. One of the key ones, if not the key one. It's still the promised land of where to launch your products and, you know, make dreams happen. As a brand or as an ingredient company from all over the world, everyone wants US market access. That's the key. But I would say that the US dietary supplement market, it's not that it's not sophisticated, but it's somewhat less sophisticated than other markets. They're just more mature on the technical side. So when it comes to clinical trials, for instance, we see new clinical trial entrants into the space on the service provision. And to me, I found that if you're going to launch on the service side in this industry, it may seem that the barrier to entry is low on the service side, but it's actually not, because you very quickly run up against regulations that you may not be aware of, particularly in clinical trials. And in regulatory consulting, you do have to have a level of technical prowess and competency in order to advance dossiers with the FDA and Health Canada, from food to pharmaceutical and everything in between. There's a lot of technical aspects, and I find that there's still a little bit of naivete on that from service provision side in the US market in particular, but that is changing, and we've been part of trying to change that paradigm and create that pivot over the years as well. And it is happening, but slower than in other markets.
Let's talk corporate culture. So I've had the pleasure of, you know, interviewing you in the past and also several members of your team. And I've always been so impressed at, you know, really the word team seems so right at Nutrasource. It seems like everybody really has a voice and really brings a lot to the table. Can you just talk to us about kind of mentorship and that corporate culture and, you know, how Nutrasource views that and how you've seen it pay off?
For sure. And yeah, our corporate culture currently is very strong, very positive. It hasn't been perfect. There have been seasons over 21 years where it hasn't been as good as it should have been. And every company goes through that from time to time as changes occur, personnel come and go. I would say for us, what has been really good over the last 4 to 5 years, our attrition's been very low, especially in the senior positions, has been incredibly low. It was very low during COVID as well. We didn't see some of the more general trends. And what's attributed to that, to your point, Maggie, is I think we allow and encourage our staff to grow their career ultimately as quickly as possible. We enable them, and that's not for everybody, but for those who want to really grow their career quickly, expand their horizons, get involved in multiple facets of the business, we really do try and empower them and encourage that. And one of the things our COO did when he came in early 2019, and he's helped tremendously with the culture, Brad Wallace, our COO, has really put in a structure and formalized, annualized, refreshable mentorship program. And that mentorship program is very intentional. We allow a lot of flexibility within it. It's not a rigid program, but it is an intentional program. And we do refresh it every year so people can swap out their mentor or their mentee if it's not working out. And we give a lot of latitude as to what the areas of focus can be. It's got to be relevant to the business, but ultimately it could be like a book club. It could just be meeting for coffee, but whatever it is, the mentor and mentee agree to it. And that's really helped build the culture and build the connectivity points as we've grown across the organizations, because organization, I should say, or across the business units, because someone in clinical may otherwise never have a good reason to talk to someone in our certifications group. But if they happen to be in the mentorship program together in that relationship, it builds that fiber across our internal ecosystem. That to me is so important. And some employees are in a certain area, and they're happy in that area. That's their happy zone. They're not driven and motivated in the same way to necessarily climb an org chart or climb a ladder. And we've been very good with that too. So we don't penalize them if that's not their gig, because some people are just in their lane and doing well and they're happy. So great. But for those who want to aspire to career growth, we've also put the tools in place for that as well. So that balanced approach to people's development, I think, has been very important. I think we also put our people forward. So I think in any industry, I find particularly in the US market as well, a lot's tied to I'll call it the cult of personality, or the entrepreneur behind it. And obviously Nutrasource has my entrepreneurial spirit and touches behind it for sure. But at the same time, we've really tried to get our people out in front. And I've really tried intentionally not to make it all about me. It's about Nutrasource as a team as much as possible. Obviously, I have to represent as well, but overall, we try and get our team members out there on the conference circuit, on committees at trade associations, speaking at conferences, all that kind of stuff, involved in the business development meetings, in the key vendor meetings, whatever it happens to be, really push them to get out there and not just make it all about any one person. And then that really fosters a team culture as well.
Yeah, it seems like there's a good lesson in here for folks growing an organization, in the sense that on two levels, you've really put trust in your team, right? Like trying to get them, a lot of entrepreneurs might have an issue with trying to actively put their team members out there in front and be the face. And then also growing within the organization, empowering them to grow their careers quickly. Sometimes, if you're running a business and you have a good, say, engineer, you want that person to it's hard to let them go and expand and expand in the other parts of the business, because you think, well, there's that need, it's being fulfilled right now. And then also, you're giving up some sort of control, and that's sometimes hard to do. So I don't know if that was an early decision on your part to do, but it just seems like on a couple of different levels, kind of trusting your team to do their best work and letting them shine is a really cool approach. And it's obviously worked out for you in the past 20 years here. Was that something that was conscious, or is that just kind of how it evolved?
Yeah, I think one thing that was really important very early on is I understood what my strengths and weaknesses were, and I understood what I needed to do to shore up the weaknesses. And I'm happy to admit the weaknesses. It's okay. I'm good with that. And try and surround myself with people that can shore up the weaknesses. And then from there, I think a big thing for me on the hiring staffing front, and I'm not as involved with HR as I used to be, because there's a time and season for that as an entrepreneur as you grow. But as the business gets a certain size, you just have to hand off some of those things too. You might be good at them, but you not necessarily like doing them, but they're important and they need to be done in a certain way. And you might have the skill set to do them, but that's not where the passion is. So to that end, our mantra for many years has been, if we're hiring someone to do a job, we should also trust them to do that job, or else what are we hiring them for in that role? So that always seemed counterintuitive to me, to hire someone and then micromanage them. And I'll be accused of macromanaging sometimes, because I'm not a micromanager. I give people a lot of space, sometimes too much space. And usually that's positive, but that can come back to bite you as well in certain circumstances. But overall, I don't want to hire people to micromanage them. We want to hire people that know what they're doing, and they're being hired because they know what they're doing. And therefore you can trust them with the work, trust them with the relationships, trust them with the communication with various stakeholders, internally and externally. And I think that's been also a key part of, and it builds culture too, because if people feel trusted by their leadership, then they feel empowered to take control and own and manage. Like, I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn of what's the best leader and what's the best boss, and the boss is a bad term. And there's tons of stuff always posted from an employee perspective. But from an employer perspective, you're looking to build up leaders and identify your future stars early and have a plan and a 1, 3, 5 year groundwork laid for them so they know how they can progress and how they can grow. So I think the other big part of all of that is I'm not really stuck on age and experience. I think we've been more interested in passion and energy, because a smart person can occur from age 20 to 60, an intelligent person, but if they're not passionate, they don't have energy, I don't really care how much industry experience they have. If they don't have passion and care for what they're doing and their work, and not every workday is perfect, but they do have to care about what they're doing in their role, and they have to care about the team. If they don't care, then we're not really interested in them. I don't really care. Then I don't care about how much experience they have. It's kind of irrelevant. No passion equals no drive, no motivation. And you can have passion at any age. So I'm not fussed about an individual's age in terms of the hiring spectrum, typically.
Yeah, that's some great role modeling there. I'm like digging so much of what you said, and especially like even going back earlier, what you said, it sounds like there's so much self-awareness. And even earlier you were talking about people, maybe you're not in a role where you want to grow. And I think a lot of times on the employee side, there's this miswanting of just, I need to climb the next ladder, maybe more so in US culture, but it's nice to think like you find your role and where you're supposed to be. And maybe that changes over time, and to have a company that helps you grow in the way that you're meant to grow. Sounds
exactly.
Yeah.
And people are highly unique, and everyone has different motivations. And I think the other thing that we do is we really try and pay attention to people's style of work and what works for them. What are their work characteristics? Because I can tell you over 21 years and a few hundred employees over time, we're up to roughly 150 now, you observe a lot about people's work characteristics. And people's work characteristics don't really change that much. You can put whatever systems and processes you want. Some people are early birds. Some people want to work late in the evening. Some people want 2 hours for lunch. Some people want to work through their lunch. And trying to jam those people into programs that don't work for them, it's better to say, this is what we need done. Figure out how to get it done. This is when it needs to get done by. And if you need a 2-hour lunch to do that, because it recharges your battery and you feel satiated and then you work better in the afternoon, go for it. Or if you want to work through your lunch so you're done by 3:30 that day, but you got the key thing done at the requisite level of quality, that's great too. But that's where I think the individual customization is really important. And I'd say the other big one is identifying your introverts, because introverts often get ignored in corporate culture, but they're actually very powerful. They're like your ninja assassins, because they calm the whole group down. They provide an interesting aspect of dynamic. They provide, I would say, real sustenance to the team, and a lot of stability, a lot of consistency, and a lot of, to a corporate culture and an office environment, a lot of security, because they're just steadfast. They work away. They're steady. And there's something to be said for that in a high-paced, dynamic work environment that's highly technical. So you've got your group that are very driven, want to grow or grow their career and go up the ladder as fast as possible. But then you have the group that just want to be quietly chipping away. They come in every day, they work steadily, and it's good to have that mix. So the diversity in the work style of individuals, I think, is important. And if you just have all alphas all the time, that doesn't work well. If you have no alphas, that's not good either. You need to have that diversity of individualism in the work culture.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's let's pivot a little bit. We've talked a lot about your corporate culture and background there. What are your thoughts on the industry and kind of where you see that from a leadership perspective in the industry, you know, both yourself and Nutrasource as a whole? Where do you see the industry going, and any advice or any outlook you could give there in terms of what we need to do as an industry to keep improving?
Well, I think with millennials and Gen Zs researching their purchases how they do, telling the brand as a brand, when we see in the marketplace is the brands and the ingredient companies who can authentically and in a transparent way tell their story. That is becoming more and more important. And using the tools available in the marketplace, in the digital world, in the physical world, in order to reinforce that narrative, tell that story over and over to multiple stakeholders, whether it's B2B, B2G, or B2C, is becoming increasingly important. And for us as a service provider, we're seeing tightening of regulations constantly across the world. So become an A-level player as much as you can as a company, no matter where you are in the supply chain. Tell your story, back it up with data, research, evidence, and science as best you can for where you are in the supply chain. And then understand your target markets in the target jurisdictions. Kind of an obvious one, but we still see a lot of missteps in that respect. So understanding if you're launching in this market or that market, what's worked in the US may not necessarily port even to Canada or Mexico, let alone across the Pacific somewhere, across the Atlantic somewhere. And picking up on the cultural nuances and how to position your product accordingly is increasingly important, and it's about getting your story across. The other thing is understanding the applications of your product, your formula, and how you can pivot on claims and claim language for market positioning in different jurisdictions is really important, and how your product might be a cosmetic in one market, a food in another from the ingredient side. Certain ingredients can be, like certain botanicals, omegas and probiotics, prebiotics can be in cosmetics, can be in foods, can be in beverages, can be in medical foods or meal replacements, can be in functional food and beverages, can go the pharma route, but it's the same core technology and core hub formula. And that to me is where botanicals are really interesting into the future in the next few years, probiotics as well. Omegas, to me, outside of some vitamin and minerals that have pharma, like OTC type status or RX status, like high dose vitamin D, for instance, which is a little more historical. But omega is the first one that to me really transitioned from being more of a dietary supplement into the pharma realm with Omacor and Lavazza. But there's a huge play on that for botanicals. And there's a huge play on that for probiotics as well. And the companies that to me understand, yeah, we can play in the Nutra and even the food space, but how to bring pharma alongside that have a real opportunity for a phenomenal growth.
Excellent. Okay, so let's pivot on growth again, but to Nutrasource. So you mentioned the growth that you've had over the past 20 years, which has been fantastic. And 2023, you've had some exciting developments. So can you talk to us a little bit about what's on the horizon for Nutrasource?
Absolutely. So we've had a couple of name changes over the course of the years too. So I mentioned earlier, we started out with the name diagnostic in our name because that's where we focused on first, looking at nutritional diagnostics to help support and validate the use of dietary supplements. And then since then, when we added clinical and regulatory and certifications and sort of phased out the diagnostic component commercially, then we changed our name to Nutrasource Pharmaceutical and Nutraceutical Services, Inc. And then from there, more recently, now we will be rebranded as SGS Nutrasource because SGS, the largest testing, inspection, certification company in the world, publicly traded on the Swiss exchange, purchased a 60%, not 60 cent, 60% stake in Nutrasource. And it was a synergistic value add type acquisition. It wasn't a restructuring, refi situation. And it's about us now being able to offer extended capabilities to our clientele in many different areas and in most key regions in the world. So Asia is still a very big growth market and opportunity for us. SGS has a very strong presence there in the key countries, China, India, Korea, Vietnam. So for us, it was a really interesting fit for our certifications, which are truly structured as international certification programs. We have the lab support, the lab network globally now to support that, as opposed to all the samples coming into us in North America and then us having to redistribute those. Now we have these hubs in key markets all over the world to better service and more expeditiously service our certification clients. And on the clinical side, through the SGS Pharma Group in Belgium, in addition to our own site here, which we rebranded as Apex Trials for positioning to the pharma and biotech industry, we now have a very sophisticated phase 1, phase 2 unit on EU soil for running clinicals there as well. So that's been pretty exciting, and two good examples of the synergistic effect of SGS taking that 60% stake in Nutrasource. So for us, it's accelerated growth and it's international growth, as opposed to historically, it's been a little bit more North American centric with the EU piece kind of growing steadily within that, but now it's opened up these new veins and new opportunities, which are truly international in focus and breadth and depth.
So that's a lot. That's a lot going on recently, and big changes and big growth obviously ahead for you guys. And as we wrap up the conversation or head that way, I'm just wondering, back to leadership for a second, how are you thinking about leading this organization as it becomes so multidimensional? And there's other facets that have just been introduced in the last year. Have you thought about, do things change from a leadership perspective, or is it more kind of steady as you go?
Well, that's a great question. It goes back to the self-awareness piece. So in speaking to other entrepreneurs that I'm in contact with, mentorship-wise, advisory-wise, one of the key things for every entrepreneur is very, very difficult. If you are truly an entrepreneur in any industry, is knowing when the business grows to a point where it's outgrown you.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that hasn't occurred for me just yet, but I'm acutely aware of the feedback loops that help me assess that on a routine basis, a regular basis. So I really want to hone in on, when is this getting too much for me, and when am I truly out of my depth? Because every business at some point does outgrow the entrepreneur, right? And at some point that's going to occur. And even if I look at somebody like an Elon Musk, where people say, how does he run 3 or whatever, 18, 1,000, multi-billion-dollar companies at once? Because he has really good people, and I think he knows how to step aside and when to get out of the way, because his team is so strong. Yeah, the team reports into him, fine. But to me, when does it go from sort of operational president CEO to board seat only?
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly reassessing that. And to me, through that assessment, I feel like I'm not there yet. And I still feel good about being the operational president CEO, but I don't think I'm blind to the fact that there will come a day where this grows beyond my operational president CEO capabilities. It will, it just has to. And in a sense, that's kind of, I don't view that as a negative thing. I view that as a positive thing, because it means we've laid the foundation, we've got the momentum, we've got the right culture, and the business takes on a life of its own. It still needs leadership, but I'll feel very good about the day when I can pass the baton, whenever that happens to be, but I don't feel like it's imminent by any means. So that's one way. I think another piece of that is, it goes back to our original focus and vision to become the world leading service provider to the nutritional industry. And now we just added a whole slew of services we can offer in our discussions. So to me, it just kind of reinforces what we've been driving towards since day one. And it really just emboldens us further. And the way it's worked too, SGS is a very based in Geneva, Switzerland, although Switzerland is not officially part of the EU. They are obviously in continental Europe, as we all know. But that European leadership style, the Swiss leadership style, I found very logical, very reasonable. It has a nice pace to it, but it's not chaotic. It's very deliberate. And I found that's meshed very well with my leadership style. So and that was part of the attraction too. That's one of the reasons, amongst others, that I felt they were a good acquisition partner for us, because of the style there. The Swiss style is very methodical, very deliberate, but it's not knee-jerk and it's not panic attack. And I appreciate that. Everything's done under the auspice or under the direction of what's best for driving the business forward. And as a global multinational, I found that based on other experiences in the industry, there's not a whole ton of ego there, which I really like too. It's all about what's best for the business. It's not about this person or that person's ego and satisfying that, because that's where businesses go sideways. You can't be a sustained successful business that way. That works over a short term sometimes with a very strong personality, but in the due course of time, it's really about everybody understanding, hey, let's make decisions in the best interest of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, congratulations on all of that success. I mean, you started out talking about, taking a hire and, helping them grow to their greatest potential. And it's the same with the business, helping it grow to its greatest potential. So congratulations.
Yes. Thanks, Maggie. Appreciate that. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Always good to connect.
Always good to connect. And like I said, the feature article is in the July issue, which you can read, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on at Nutrasource. So great to talk to you again, Will.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks,
All right,
Todd.
take care, Will.
Take care. Appreciate it.